Welcome! Thank you, Run directors and committee members, for taking the time to watch this video introduction to the metastatic breast cancer teams at the CIBC Run for the Cure. It is hard now that we can't meet in person as easily, but we hope this virtual option will help. I want to thank you for your incredible efforts as volunteers at the Run to make it a successful fundraising event. My name is Heather Douglas. I've been living with metastatic breast cancer for 10 years, and I'm one of the co-founding team captains of the MBC teams. I oversee the multi-site MBC team effort with the help of Tricia James Wong and Karima Jassani. Our contact information will be at the end. My part of the presentation will cover 3 topics. First, what is metastatic breast cancer, which I'll usually shorten to MBC, and some useful facts. Second, I'll cover the history of the MBC teams at the Run and why we formed. And third, how you can help. Next, I'll turn over the video to show personal stories from other MBC team participants from across Canada. Before I start, I would like to acknowledge my teammates from across the country who have died over the last 4 years. That is my sister Susan in the first picture. She died in 2017 at the age of 47. What is metastatic breast cancer? MBC is breast cancer that is spread outside the breast. It may also be referred to as stage 4, advanced, or secondary cancer. Breast cancer only kills once it has left the breast. The pictures on this slide show metastases or mets in the most usual places: liver, lung, bones, or brain. These aren't pretty pictures and are a far cry from the usual perky breasts or pink frilly bras that accompany most breast cancer communications. This next slide summarizes some useful things for you to know about metastatic breast cancer. First, an estimated 15,000 Canadians, women and men, are living with MBC. There are a lot of us. Second, most people with metastatic breast cancer were first treated with early stage disease. Metastatic recurrences can occur 1, 5, 10, 15 years after a person's original diagnosis and treatment. 20 to 30% of people originally diagnosed with early stage disease will develop metastasis. Third, about 5% of people diagnosed with breast cancer are stage 4 de novo. This means cancer is already metastasized at their initial diagnosis. Fourth, researchers are still trying to understand why metastasis occurs. It is complicated. Mostly it's bad luck. Fifth, metastatic breast cancer accounts for about 5,000 deaths annually in Canada. Our MBC teams are often asked why the distinction of metastatic versus early stage is important to us. Having done both, I can emphasize that living with MBC is very different. I am one of the unlucky early-stage breast cancer patients who experienced a metastatic recurrence just at the 5-year mark after my initial diagnosis and treatment. I've now been living with MBC for 10 years, and I know I've been lucky since the median life expectancy is just 3 years. I will be in treatment for the rest of my life. I've had to change treatments 8 times. Each drug combination works for a little while, but then the tumors become resistant and start growing, and we have to move on. I've had more than 100 oncologist visits. These days it's every 4 weeks. My current line of treatment, which started in November, is intravenous chemotherapy, 3 Mondays out of 4. I will keep going to these appointments until this chemo stops working. It is a grind. Since 2010, I've had more than 40 CT scans and 5 biopsies. I've needed to have fluid drained from around my lungs 2 times and around my heart once. I've also been fortunate to have been in 4 clinical trials, so I personally know the importance of cancer research. But living with metastatic breast cancer isn't only about one's interactions with the medical establishment. It has totally changed the direction of my life, which has been hard for the planner and me. I've had to give up an exciting and challenging career. I had to give up the dream of having a family with my husband. With scans every 3 months, I rarely plan any further ahead than that, waiting for the shoe to drop again. picture of the pool on this slide is to support an analogy about how many people living with MBC feel about the run. Imagine you're drowning in a pool. You're flailing, you're screaming, you're trying to get some attention. Or maybe you are just quietly slipping away. The rescuers arrive. You are saved. But instead of helping you, the rescuers start teaching the people on the deck how to swim. This analogy captures the experience of people living with MBC. Sometimes it seems that the wider breast cancer community ignores metastatic breast cancer and that too much attention is focused on early detection, prevention, and celebration of survivors. While the proportion has been improving, most research focuses on primary cancers instead of the more complicated metastatic cancers. I think these are key reasons why not all people living with MBC embrace the run for the cure. They feel abandoned. In 2016, some of my friends and I started to compare notes about the roadblocks and frustrations that we were encountering at the Run for the Cure. We decided to band together with the goals of raising awareness of metastatic breast cancer, raising funds for research, and having some fun. By banding together, we hope to attract more attention and make it harder for our efforts to be rebuffed or ignored. In our first year, we had 10 teams with 185 participants. Charlottetown to Vancouver. Our smallest team had 2 people, my sister and her husband in Fredericton, the largest 65 in Calgary. We raised $36,000. Then something special happened. The then Canadian Breast Cancer Foundation established a metastatic breast cancer fund, now the Metastatic Futures Funds. This addressed the #1 concern for the MBC community when asked about fundraising, whether or not the dollars raised would help research into metastatic disease. Now, the funds raised by the MBC teams could be directed to the MBC Fund. We've enjoyed year-over-year growth in fundraising since we started, as word got out about the option. In 2019, we had 39 teams with 736 participants and raised over $240,000. We are now the Run's second largest corporate team in terms of fundraising. In our coronavirus pandemic world, participation for people in active treatment will be challenging at the 2020 Run. We have our thinking caps on how not to lose momentum, because metastatic breast cancer is relentless, and research is still desperately needed for better and more effective treatments. Over the past 4 years, there have been some promising steps and wonderful cooperation with Run management. Some of the wins are the option to direct our fundraising to metastatic research, as previously mentioned. The renaming of the Hope Lounge was a brilliant step in addressing concerns about inclusiveness. Some Run sites have been generous in providing a table or tent to their local MBC community. And at some Run sites, a welcoming space has been put aside for people who can't do the full walk. Our metastatic breast cancer team started through the friendships among MBC patients as we navigate this disease. It's grown with the assistance of our friends and family. We'll continue to rely on our allies for the future. How you can help to make the Run more welcoming and inclusive to people with metastatic breast cancer. Our recommendations have been altered to reflect the reality of a virtual Run for the Cure in 2020. Invite a person with experience with metastatic breast cancer, as a patient or as a loved one, to speak to your Run committee meeting. Connect with your local MBC team or teams. We can assist. Be informed about metastatic breast cancer. Highlight Canadian Cancer Society's research efforts, especially in the metastatic space. Help spread the word with your social media and other communications. Help us raise awareness of metastatic breast cancer, let people know about the MBC fundraising option, and ensure all messages are inclusive and respectful to the entire breast cancer community. Consider how anyone in these groups might respond to your messaging. The second part of this video introduction to the MBC teams I chose this picture vignettes from some of our teammates from across Canada. These vignettes and others will be released later in the summer on our Facebook and Instagram accounts as we near the Run date. This second to last slide of the presentation has links to metastatic breast cancer blogs and writing by Canadians that you might find interesting. The last slide has contact information. Please feel free to join our closed Facebook group for MBC teams. Our MBC team vision is for teams at every run site, for the run to be more and more welcoming for people living with MBC and their loved ones, and for the funding of research focused on better treatments and even a cure for metastatic breast cancer. Thank you for being willing to help.